Welcome to Books Are Good Medicine, a podcast sponsored by the Shakopee, Mdewakanton, and Sioux community, featuring books and other Native American-focused teaching resources. We're your hosts, Odia Wood-Krieger
and Allison Waka. For many Native American tribes, winter is a season of storytelling. And here in Minnesota, winter has arrived. These colder months provide a time for rest and reflection when elders can share oral narratives with younger generations.
For the Ojibwe people, traditionally, snow must be on the ground to tell sacred stories. In this episode, we talk about the significance of winter stories and share some of our favorite picks for winter books. We hope you can find one to cozy up with and enjoy. Thanks for listening. Hi, Allison.
Yeah, hi, Odia.
So
we're having fun here, aren't we?
We are.
Yeah.
And so, in case our listeners don't know, winter season, I always think of Deanna Standing Cloud. She's like, winter is Ojibwe University.
That's so cute.
And so it is time for stories that you don't get to hear at other times of the year. And so when we think back, cold, dark, you want to preserve heat and energy and calories.
Time to rest. And I think winter is, with storytelling, Ojibways do say, once snow is on the ground. Navajos say it as well. So I think a lot of tribes have that kind of mindset. But there is controversy, right, around I've had people say you can tell stories once it snows. It doesn't have to stick, but then you can tell stories. Or we have the folks that say, no, it literally has to be on the ground when you're saying it, the stories. And so there are many different views on the rule of storytelling in the winter.
Another one I heard was if it's in a book, like if it's published in a book,
you can tell it anytime.
You can tell it anytime. Oh. And I'm just sort of like, so I guess my advice to educators would be is talk to your American Indian Parent Advisory Committee. Right. APAC. If you have access to an elder, as long, I don't want to say clear it with your elder, but like as a courtesy, I would, ask someone what's the appropriate
traditional
action
story
that you would like me to uphold,
to honor. Exactly. Yep. Because there's many different views, and really it's just at the discretion of who's telling the story, right? Whoever feels comfortable. And but it also just makes it hard because you never know when the snow is going to come or not come, and people like to plan events. And it was always so funny because the library would want to do a storytelling event, and I would be like, well, we can't do that. And, people may or may not know this, but in libraries, I think across the board in institutions, you have to plan like 90 days at least ahead of time. And so it was very difficult. So we always,
last year was an absolute train wreck.
Right.
If folks don't remember, I think people were maple syruping January 27th or something. It was insane.
And I think my kiddo went sledding once maybe.
Yeah.
And so every year is different. And so hard to plan, definitely.
Yeah.
But
I think what we need to remember is that winter is for rest and relaxation and being together and learning. And so last year felt really rushed. Like we didn't have the break. We didn't have the transition like we normally would. I never hear Dakota stories. Do you ever hear them? I always hear Anishinaabe stories.
No, I have heard Dakota tell stories, but not, I don't know if they have the rule or not. I would assume there's some sort of tradition around it. But I can't remember if it was winter.
Because I've heard Chante Maza tell stories.
It's like fall time.
but I'm like, I don't know. So
Yeah.
why I bring up Ojibwe specifically is there are two different types of stories. The Bajamoan, the everyday stories, and Adazokon, the winter. Sacred stories. So I only have two of their books, but these books are by Leonard and Mary Moose.
Yes.
Which I love, love, love.
Mother and son, right?
No, these are husband and wife.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of her son.
There are three boys, I believe. And Abe does a lot with his mom. But why I want folks to know about these books, so this Bagone Giizhig book, The Hole in the Sky, Mary has written this beautiful preamble. Respecting and caring for Adazokanan are sacred stories. And she says, Adazokanan teach you what is behind everything. She says, when I'm outside, I see stories. When I look at the trees, the animals, the stars, the water, I see stories. In the Anishinaabe language, or Anishinaabe-Moan, everything is alive and has a very personal and specific history. She continues, when I speak Anishinaabe-Moan, as I listen to myself speak the words, it teaches me as I speak. The natural world around us shows the care with which this place was prepared for human beings. As Anishinaabe, we know the true history of every living thing, how each is a gift to us, and what our responsibilities are in terms of showing respect and care for such generosity. And so she goes on and says, Adazokanan are written in the stars. We can never forget the truth of our existence. We are spirits on a physical journey with a sacred duty to understand, respect, and care for the generous gifts we receive from all beings who inhabit the earth. Right? Like, such a beautiful, such a beautiful teaching at the beginning. But why I bring this up is they specifically ask in these books, to not share these stories outside of wintertime.
I mean, that's totally within their right. And to have people respect our ways and bringing them back. And that's really beautiful. And it makes it a stronger story, right? And I think storytelling has been our way of teaching the why. And storytelling is, I know it's, I actually went, I think it was mother son, but I went to one of their storytelling.
I was there.
Oh yeah.
Division of Indian work.
Yes, Division of Indian work. And it really teaches patience too to the kiddos and learning. And I think, after COVID, it was really, really hard for our kids to kind of acclimate to, being in presence of others and listening. And during COVID, really, you could just go from one thing to another, or do what you want, do your schoolwork when you wanted, and all this. And so I think storytelling was, that was the first time he had ever had to take part in it. And it was, he did really well for the most part, but I think just being around others too, it was a little different for him. It was something that the kids had to acclimate to after COVID, and that storytelling was a really nice event, and but it was their voices are very soothing as well. And it was
warm.
It was,
we had bellies full of fry bread and wild rice soup, and you're just like,
yeah, it was just a nice winter event. And I think that's how storytelling should be. And that's nice that they say that, right? And
I love that you sort of give like a preamble to storytelling, because I think a lot of folks, non-native folks, go in there like, all right, I'm going to hear some stories.
Right.
It's going to be very
like
linear.
Yep.
It's going to make, there's a start and a middle and an end, and I'm going to get it.
And it's not the same.
It is not the same.
The story, you can hear it one winter and the next winter, it's the same story, but it's dependent on maybe what you went through that year or who's in the audience, or like everything it changes each time you hear it.
It's something that you glossed over as not important last year. Suddenly you were like,
go into
oh
detail.
my gosh, this is the thing that I should notice.
Right. The storyteller is always on their own.
I was thinking just, in the back of my head about Jim Rock. And I love Jim Rock. And he used to lead the Badote trips for Minneapolis Public when I worked there. And it was so funny. He'd bring in, a lot like me, I guess, me with books. He'd have all these props. He had a wagon and all these things. He'd be pulling stuff out. And then he'd be like, I shouldn't be telling you this right now. And I remember the first few times that I heard him speak, I was like, it's okay, because I don't understand what you're telling me, right? And a lot of non-Native folks, in this case educators, were always like, he's too nonlinear. I'm not getting what he's saying. And so we would get feedback that, we didn't necessarily love how he facilitated that. And they preferred Ethan Neerdale's, right? Because Ethan does a more beginning, middle, and end. Whereas Jim is just... Jim just meanders.
Yeah.
Right? Which is fine.
Yeah.
And so I love that we sort of prepare people for that.
I feel like that's how my mind goes a lot of times. Like I'll be telling Sarah, side note.
I think this podcast is like... This podcast is a great exhibit of that. So these particular ones, I know they have one on the Sweat Lodge, the Pleiades. So I think there are 4 in this collection, and these are the only 2 that I have. But I wanted folks to have that. And then I also brought, when we talk about sacred stories, I wanted folks, sometimes we call them pourquoi stories, it was like how the something got, how the chipmunk got its stripes, or, why the bear has a short tail, or whatever the case may be. So if folks have been watching the podcast for a bit, you'll know that we had lovely Tom and Betsy Peacock from Black Bears and Blueberries Publishing. They have several of these. Why the Bear Has a Short Tail, Nanabuju and the Elk's Head.
Well, I think with the short tail, Jonathan
Thunder?
Yes, did a little movie on it as well, which is really, really cute. My kids love that. So if you want to look that up too, it's really good.
Zage and Misabikwe. I grabbed this one, and I don't know if this one would be, but folks can look it up. The Little People and the Water of Life. Little people are kind of have to be careful.
Yeah.
When you talk about little
their
people.
keys.
And so there are lots of that. And then I have some from Jason Eagle Speaker. So these are Blackfeet, Nape and the Rock, Nape and the Wolves, Nape and the Bullberries, Nape and the Elk, and Nape and the Buffalo. And so for folks who don't know, Nape is their trickster. So trickster stories are typically winter stories. So like Nanabuju, Wanabuju, however, Nanabush, there's all sorts of mix. In Cree, we talk about Ajijaak, Nape. So there are various tricksters.
Yes.
Who's your Navajo trickster?
The coyote.
Mm-hmm. Right. After I said it, I was like, oh yeah, it's totally Coyote.
Yeah. He's someone you have to be aware of. I actually was just telling the kids over the weekend how, because they were talking, a black cat had went across the road. I was like, oh, we actually do the same thing for coyotes. Like if a coyote goes across, you're not supposed to, well, it's just, a warning or whatever. And so I remember coming back from college, and it was the middle of the night. And I was like, I'm not going to cross. I'm going to wait for somebody else to come, and you have somebody else go across it first, or you reroute and go a different way. And I waited for a couple hours and nobody came. So I finally, but yeah, the coyote is just someone that gives you warning, sort of like the owl, you know. But I was just telling the kids that over the weekend.
And there's a lovely story about placing the stars.
Oh,
right, with Coyote.
Yep. He's all over the place. Yeah.
Yeah.
Does a lot.
He's busy.
Yeah.
And busy making mischief.
Right. Exactly.
And
it must be fun. So it's just teaching lessons, on how to act right in this world. And, I think that's where a lot of the whys get answered over the winter. And so then during the summer times, you have some lessons that you learned and can incorporate. I have felt as I've gotten older that winter too is, I used to feel so enclosed by winter, and it was just like, but now learning the rest and that the animals rest, but there is still so much beauty in winter that I didn't necessarily see when I was younger. I just recently learned that, there's this little, I forget what it's called, but it's like a little airspace between snow and like the leaves, and mice still like
Yeah,
run
it's like a
under-
super highway under there.
Yes, I had no idea. And so I was like, oh, winter, there still is something going on underneath the.
And that's why if you see fox, they'll be like with their ears trying to
see
locate,
what's moving.
and all of a sudden they'll do like the whoop,
well, even the
and
birds,
and so that they can hear them running down, and
insane. Yeah,
so much fun. I love that you talk about rest and renewal.
Yes.
So I brought 2 lovely books, both by Richard Wagamese, One Drum and Embers.
Okay.
This is Embers, one Ojibwe meditation, and then Stories and Ceremonies for a Planet. So these little vignettes, and then beautiful pictures with quotes. So just like, how do we care for each other?
I think I've seen those at Birch Bark. I think I have.
I am just a super fan.
Yeah.
All things Richard Wagamese.
Yeah.
He has a book called Starlight. I actually haven't read it, but Milkweed put that out.
Oh.
It was his last book. Lovely little quotes. This one is, "This is how you change the world. The smallest circles first." And then it has the ripples in the water.
Yeah.
On the back it says, "We are all one energy, one soul, one song, and one drum." Yeah, it's just
that's beautiful.
Just so take care of yourself.
Yeah.
Wasn't
Wasn't there a book that said something like rest is a revolution or something like that?
Probably.
Yeah. I think it is not in our nature nowadays. It's like, who is the busiest?
Oh yeah.
And it's just,
Are you pointing fingers at me? Because I feel like I'm like, oh,
no, I'm not. I'm talking about myself in this, and like how I'm really having to be intentional about resting.
It's like a badge of honor, like to be so busy.
Yes.
So busy.
Yes.
All the busy.
Yes. I'm triple booked, and so it is very difficult once you get busy to like learn how not to be busy, or be more intentional on your relaxation and your resting. And just because you're not like, I think as a single mom too, I always think like, oh, there's always laundry to be done. Oh, there's always something to do. And now it's over the weekend, I really tried to take some time and breathe and hang out with my kid. And so
do you have self-care as your New Year's resolution?
I don't know if it's self-care. It's just more about, I think, just being more intentional of putting the phone down, not worry. Okay, so there's dirty laundry. Like it's always going to be there, and just being more accepting of you know, just because you're not moving doesn't mean you're not accomplishing anything. And so it's a difficult mindset to get into. So here I am in my 40s, like learning that, you know.
Some people never learn it.
Yeah, I guess so. But those will be two good books to really read over the winter. I love those. But there's one author in this next book that you have on top that I like that might lead us into another winter. So the Never Whistle at Night.
Who's your
Wagamese.
Okay.
So never whistling at night is another rule, right, that we have because it brings in, my son loves to whistle. And he's
I'm a terrible whistler.
I don't really remember where he picked it up from, but it's a rule. And he's like, oh, but what does it mean, Mom? And I'm just like, well, you just call bad things in and you don't want to do that. And so, but it's so cute. He'll like stop and we'll be indoors somewhere and he'd be like, Mom, is it dark yet? And then he's so adorable. But Never Whistle at Night, this book, what we call it, short stories, right? But Wagamese is an author in this book, but he also wrote another one. When I thought of winter titles, he was the first one that popped into my head. He wrote this book. What is it? Moon of the Crusted Snow. And he's written many other books but this was the first
had
one.
Midnight Sweat Lodge
and Autumn Leaves or
Moon of Falling Leaves,
right?
Or something of the sort.
And he is someone that has been sort of following him over the years, and he this book is. I've never read one like this before. The Moon of the Crusted Snow. It's like one of those. What do they call them? Where it's like the end of the world, apocalypse.
Post-apocalyptic.
Yes, I've never read one of those before, and this is the first one. And it's very. You feel very in the winter. But there was this part where he writes about, I think it's like being at like the kitchen table and of like a grandparents. Now I'm getting kind of fuzzy because it's been a few years, but I just totally pictured my grandma's kitchen table with like her chain smoking and the coffee and, the teal. One of my grandpas had like this teal, his walls were painted teal, like a bright teal, and I just, it was just like always so warm. He had a wood stove. And so that book really placed me into winter. And it definitely is a book people should be reading this winter. And Wagamese just is a great writer, and he's Ojibwe from Canada, of course. But a good winter book.
This one, they say Indigenous dark fiction anthology.
I've heard you. It is, maybe not totally one for the students. Teachers should read it first, maybe, or just pick and choose.
So I haven't read this one yet. It's on my TBR pile.
Yes,
I have an elaborate one because whenever something comes out, I'm like, oh, I should get that, and then I'm terrible about reading it. And I have a friend who was like, oh, I'm not buying any more books. I'm going to read the ones I have. And I was like, ooh, that sounds like punishment, right? Because I love to buy books. I have 25 sitting in a, in a cart. Yeah, scary stories, potentially unnerving, scary stories for Never Whistle at Night, which leads me to a couple others. So I don't know if folks know this, but I think being in the dark a whole lot makes people come up with some really scary stuff. So some of the scariest stuff I've seen is from the Arctic. And so I have a couple here, Dark Dreams of the Ancient Arctic. And then
even the covers.
Right? And then The Shadows That Rush Past. So I brought a couple of these. And, you know, I'm sure folks know this, but they, like Barrow, Alaska, and I apologize that I can't remember the traditional or the now real name of Barrow. But, like, the sun sets in end of November, and it does not, like, there's like a kind of glow, but there's no sunrise until end of January. I was like,
oh my gosh.
You definitely need stories.
Yeah.
And you definitely need that. So both of these are by Rachel Qitsualik. Probably said the name wrong. Sorry, Rachel. And then one that's in my cart is one called Burning Cold. And so I don't have it yet, but it's another Arctic one. And so there's a lot of scary stuff that comes out of the north.
Definitely. Winter is such a strong season. You just have so much to battle, and the wind and the
live or die.
Yeah, the ice, ice is dangerous. Everything, you go outside and you have to be prepared. And so I think that's what storytelling is all about, preparing you. And oh my goodness.
So I brought this one, trying to have a mix. This is How I Survived 4 Nights on the Ice. And it is graphic novel.
I love graphic novels.
Again, I don't know if folks know this, but Arctic games. So when they do like this Indigenous games in the Arctic, they're often really hard and
intense.
I wouldn't call them games, but like they do ear pull and they do like finger pull but all of the games have some sort of hidden survival.
Okay.
So like pain on your ears, like this ear pull thing actually is to symbolize like what pain and frostbite would be. And like the finger pull is to like, they do a knuckle hop, like they do all these things that are like what I consider pretty harsh on the body, but they're all setting people up for skills for survival in a very harsh climate.
Yeah, that makes sense.
When you think, suddenly you're like, oh, that makes total sense. Mm-hmm. But imagine hopping, like you're in a plank position and you are literally hopping on your knuckles and they go like around the gym and like their knuckles will all be bloody, but it's skills.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and I think your body does learn, I've been there before. And then it's just that memory of it all.
So this one talks about the traditional skills and knowledge she learned to stay alive on the Arctic. In the Arctic, yeah. First, this harrowing first-person account of 4 nights spent on the open sea ice.
Oh.
So graphic novel that recommend for people to have. And then the last one I brought is a Cree calendar. And cute. But I just love when the trees crackle with cold. Because, when you live in cold places, like, you know the way. Like, I know how the sound or how the snow sounds.
It was
when it's so, so cold.
I'm going to tell a quick story about my sister, my youngest sister. And she'll probably, I don't know, maybe she'll be mad at me. I don't care. But once we were on our way, all of us were in the car. We were driving past this like nature reserve or whatever. And she's like, oh, look at all the bare naked trees. And it was just so, this is when she was teeny tiny and she was just so adorable. But yeah, we call them, bare naked trees, which they are. It's so cute. But that's what it reminded me of when you brought up this book.
Yeah. And so it goes through, and I love the watercolors, but talks about like what the moon is called and then why it's called that. And so like March, when the geese announce their arrival in the spring. And I also like it because it gives us something to look forward to, because winter can be long.
It can, yeah.
And
days are short.
Sometimes we don't want to rest. We're eager to see what's coming next. And so I love this one too, that the pictures are so beautiful and just hope and paying attention to the world around us and what's coming next. So do you have any other books you'd like to discuss?
Oh gosh. No, I think we did a good. You did great. I had my winter one with Wab and so yeah, I think
I should have brought some hockey ones. I know you had a hockey one.
Yes,
on your list.
I feel like in Minnesota, we always have hockey, but it just reminds me of the Electric Indian has this. It's a movie by PBS. Miss Hale,
Leah Hale, is
yes,
amazing.
directed. Yeah, she. But there was this part where they're playing hockey with cans, like smushed down cans, and here in Minnesota, and I just thought like hockey is such a winter. I mean, I guess some folks here play it year round, but like, it just reminds me of ice and how we have learned to adapt and still have fun, here in the frozen tundra that we have in Minnesota.
I was laughing when people say that because I'm like, it's not tundra. We're on
no,
tundra.
it's not. But it does get pretty cold sometimes. I think, the 30 below or whatever. And I felt so Minnesotan where we're like, oh, but it's not windy. It's nice. It's the wind. It's the wind, Odia.
I think if anything though, that cold reminds us that we need to slow down, but it also is a good rest for all the animals and the plants.
Yes.
And we didn't get that last year. So
hopefully.
Yeah. Feels like we're moving in the right direction.
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
happy winter.
Happy winter to you. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Books Are Good Medicine. Subscribe to our channel on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. You can also visit our website, booksaregoodmedicine.com, to find episodes and resources or to send us a comment. This podcast is sponsored by the Shakopee Metawakan Sioux community and produced by Goff Public. Our theme music is Stomp Dance by Blue Dog. The opinions expressed on the Books Are Good Medicine podcast by its co-hosts and guests are their own in their personal capacities and do not necessarily reflect the views of any organization with whom they are affiliated or of the podcast sponsor.